Good afternoon and welcome once again to our weekly media briefing and public health update with Montgomery County Executive Mark Elridge. I'm Lorna Virgilla, Hispanic Public Information Officer from Montgomery County Government, and joining us today is Dr. Nina Ashford, Chief of Public Health Services, Dr. James Bridgers, the Director of the Department of Health and Human Services, as well as Mr. Sean O'Donnell, Deputy Chief of Public Health Services, also for HHS. Dr. Earl Stoddard, our Assistant Chief Administrative Officer, and today our special guest is Montgomery County Public Schools Superintendent, Dr. Thomas Taylor. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Mr. County Executive, I toss it to you. How are you today?
I'm fine today.
Thank you.
It's a lovely day. I had an air conditioner guy come by to look at my house. So any day I get somebody over there to look at the air conditioning, it's a good thing. So I want to thank everybody for joining us again this week. And we're going to start with schools since we have the superintendent here. Thank you, Dr. Taylor, for joining us. We're home to the largest school district in the state of Maryland and one of the largest in the nation. We have more than 160,000 students and close to 25,000 people are employed by MCPS. MCPS is not just a school district, it's also a community asset, and its success and the responsibility for that success of its students and employees is with all of us. Our support and involvement are crucial to the success of our economic development efforts and the quality of life in Montgomery County. When you think about school system and what we do to support it, it's not just supporting the school system, but it underpins a lot of other things that depend on this system for the county to be successful. And people choose to live here because of MCPS, and businesses stay here because of us. Businesses actually come here because of the school system and the environment they believe they can provide to their prospective employees. So there are a lot of important things that the school system brings us. This year, we embark on a new chapter with Dr. Thomas Taylor at the helm of the district as the new superintendent. And his vision for MCPS is quality of education, academic rigor, and commitment to inclusion is clear and inspiring, as well as to the safety of students. I mean, I was with him last night, I think, and it was in an all you might have made the point that number one job is making sure everybody feels safe. And I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. If people don't feel safe, it's hard to be focused on all the other things that happen in school. So I want to thank you publicly for bringing that up last night. As we face the system's current challenges, it's clear that strong leadership is crucial to keep us among the country's most highly regarded school districts, and our high schools consistently rank among the top in the state when evaluated by U.S. News and World Report. But we have ways to improve, and we're going to continue to make efforts in that direction. Whether our challenges are budgetary, policy, staffing, or programming, our focus is on creating an environment where our students thrive and our teachers can teach. So right now, I'd like to welcome Dr. Taylor to talk a little bit about what he's doing to prepare for the upcoming school year. And thank you for joining us today. And as a side note, I think this may be the first time that the superintendent of schools and the county executive are both graduates of MCPS.
Fantastic. I love it. And thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor, and I hope to rejoin you on a number of occasions. But what a great time to kick off the school year. Love National Night Out that you referred to about some of our meetings last night, because in a lot of ways, this is an unofficial kickoff to the school year and a great opportunity to bring community members together and to talk about how we can be a safer community and stay connected. The school system is very busy this time of year. I'm a seasoned veteran of MCPS after 1 month on the job. I'm thrilled to be back in my home school community, and thrilled that we share that leadership trait of being hometown guys. I think that that's actually really important. That context does matter. Some of the things that we've been working on this summer, as you mentioned, we're a large employee group of nearly 25,000 employees, but we are looking to add a little over 900 new educators to our team this year. We still have about 160 full-time vacancies and about 100 part-time vacancies that we're still looking for, but that's tremendous progress that we've made this summer. we still have some critical needs that need to be filled. So I would encourage anyone who is thinking about joining MCPS or Team Montgomery County to come look at the school systems and look at some of the career opportunities that we have, because this is a great place to live, work, and learn. And we want to have you a part of our team, and that's a big part of what we do to get prepared for the school year. You mentioned safety, and that is also critical as a priority for us this year. I would love to say that instruction is our #1 priority. It's not. It's our #2 priority. Our #1 priority is making sure that our students, our staff, and our visitors have a safe, welcoming, and inclusive environment to come to. They can't learn without feeling safe, without feeling supported. And we have some work to do in that space. And I think we have taken the right steps and the right measures to move us towards that, reviewing some of our practices, reviewing some of the things that we need to tighten up this school year so that everybody has a better experience. And that's pretty critical to us. Some other critical things that are happening right now in the school system: we're preparing our grounds and our facilities. Summer has a really interesting way of testing our HVAC systems. So we have to make sure that they are up and running so that students have a comfortable learning experience, and our teachers and staff have a comfortable work environment. Our grounds need to also be tidied up so that everybody comes to a beautiful looking school when they show up. We just recently released bus routes. So folks have that to look forward to in trying to prepare and map out their schedules and their everyday routines as the school year gets started. I do want to take this opportunity to invite the community to our annual Back to School Fair that will be held on Saturday, August 24th at the Westfield Wheaton at 11160 Veers Mill Road in Wheaton. This will be held from 10 o'clock in the morning to 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and this is the place to be on Saturday the 24th, because it's a great opportunity to have a little fun, to mix it up with some community members, to get some resources and make some connections with the school system. A very popular vendor at this event will be the Ask MCPS table, where we'll be staffing with community navigators to answer questions that people may have, everything from lunch accounts to bus routes to where do I get my school supply list and who do I connect with at the school. We're all there to help. We also have our fabulous first responders from the Montgomery County community are going to be there as well. Our kids loved running around fire trucks and getting to meet some of our great police officers and some of our emergency responders, and this is a great time for them to interact. It's also a great time to get free immunizations for our kids who are preparing for school, and to talk to some folks in the health and wellness space. I would be remiss if I also didn't point out that there's also a DJ and a lot of interactive activities brought to you by the Kid Museum and some of our teachers and staff. So we're thrilled. This is going to be a great school year. We have a lot to do, but we're really excited about what the future holds, and we look forward to seeing everybody on the 24th and on the first day of school shortly thereafter.
Thank you very much, Dr. Taylor. Members of the media, this is the time we open it up for questions for our guests, for Superintendent Dr. Taylor. I see Kate Ryan raised her hand first. Please raise your hand. Go ahead. Good afternoon, Kate Ryan, WTOP.
Good afternoon. Thank you so very much. I really appreciate it. Dr. Taylor, one of the things you just brought up, back to school fair, I was at one of the opportunities for parents to get supplies without charge, new and gently used supplies. Is there a standardization that you guys are instituting? And I ask because, and I'm a former teacher, and often different teachers would say, I know they told you to buy this, but I want you to buy that. And I'd have parents come to me and say, you've got to be kidding me. How many supplies do I have to buy? What guidance can you give parents on their back to school purchases? We've got the tax-free week coming up as well.
That's absolutely right. And what a great time to go shopping for school supplies and take advantage of that offering in Maryland. Off the top of my head, I don't know what the specific standardizations are, although I know that there have been a lot of efforts to reduce that expectation of a specific this or a specific that. We want to provide equity of access for our kids and families. And just know that our students, when they come to school, that they'll have access to the materials that they need if they're not able to find them out in the community. And that I know that we're trying to remove a lot of that specificity that can sometimes be a barrier for our families. So thank you for asking that, Kate. That's an important thing to illuminate.
Appreciate it. Real quick follow-up, if I could, on school safety. Is there something that's going to be different this year? And I know, again, you're just coming into this job, but you do have the former police chief is now head of security for the school system. And there were a lot of concerns last year about kids not feeling safe in their own spaces.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that there are lots of different dimensions to safety. It's not just our physical safety, but it's environmental safety, the mental health needs of our students. And so looking at safety through a multi-dimensional lens, and it's not just our students too, and it's making sure that our staff also feel safe, and our visitors, when they come to campus, also feel safe. The good news is that there are some things that we know we need to look at in making sure that our physical buildings are safe and secure. Of course, with safety being the priority, we don't disclose all of those details because we want to make sure the good guys know the information and not necessarily share that with the public writ large. But I'm very comfortable in sharing that we have a lot of work to do in what our safety plans look like, and how we execute those safety plans with fidelity, and making sure that there is some standardization that you referred to, not just about school supplies, but how we address certain safety threatening incidents or potentially critical incidents, and making sure that everybody's on the same page in terms of communication with parents, in terms of communication with students and staff, but also how we respond to specific issues. And I think you're going to look forward to some positive changes this year in that space.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kate. Talia Varelas, Univision DC. Go ahead, Talia. Good afternoon.
Hi, yes, good afternoon. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. I do have a few questions. I don't know how many I can ask, but feel free to cut me off when time is up. The first one is, what has been the biggest challenges you have faced ever since you took over your position? ¿Cuál ha sido algunos de los retos que ha enfrentado desde que tomó posesión de su cargo?
Well, I think one of the biggest challenges is getting reacclimated to the county and learning a lot of the people and structures that are in place. And this will be a long process. This is a large organization, and we have a lot of hardworking folks that are responsible for different components of the organization. And I really do want to get to know where people's strengths are and where our organization's strengths are and some of the challenges. And I think that that's going to take time. There's definitely some low-hanging fruit, but learning and relearning Montgomery County and its school system has been my biggest learning to date.
How do you plan to address the situation of the budget cut and how it can affect the students, the personnel, and the staff?
Well, I think that we have a lot of responsibility to make sure that we're delivering a high-quality school system to our community. One of the things that I love about MCPS and Montgomery County, and something that hasn't changed since I was a child, is that Montgomery County has high expectations for MCPS. They want the very best for their kids, they want the very best for their community, and they want their community to thrive. And that does require an investment in our school system. It does require an investment in our teachers and our staff in order to remain competitive. And so it's going to be a challenge for us to look at what matters most when we're prioritizing what needs to be a part of our budget in this year and in coming years.
Okay, thank you. And what is the plan to be able to address that and work with the new budget, and also so that it doesn't affect the personnel, the students, and the staff as much?
I think we have a heavy lift in terms of program evaluation, and to see what has been effective versus what hasn't been effective, what requires additional investment versus what requires us to potentially review or scale back moving forward. And I just think that that's going to be a long and comprehensive process, but I also think that it's what our citizens are expecting of us at this point. They want us to invest in the things that are going to make the biggest difference in the classroom.
How many teachers and staff are affected?
In terms of what specifically, I would say that everybody is affected anytime that there's any kind of fiscal retrenchment. But do you have a specific question regarding that?
Yeah, just in general, if there's any personnel that won't have a job next school year.
Fortunately, I think we're well past that phase. There isn't any reductions planned at this point.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Thalia. Tom Russo, ABC7. Good afternoon, Tom.
Hey, good afternoon. This is, forgive me, Dr. Taylor, this is a non-education question for County Executive Elrich. We're doing kind of a preview of the storms that are coming and possible flooding. So
Tom, can you hold that question for afterwards? So we're kind of taking now MCPS related.
Oh, no, that's okay. Yeah, just let me know. Yeah.
Nice to see you, Tom.
Sure.
It's been a while.
Yeah, good to see you too.
We'll see you in a minute. Be safe. I hope you're not the one driving.
No.
Ashley Campbell, and Montgomery Community Media, I believe. Go ahead. Good afternoon.
I'm Moco 360.
Moco 360. Sorry, I got a little distracted there with Tom. Go ahead.
Hold on. Ginny's in the room with me, so let me fix this really quick.
Now you're muted. We do not hear you. Try it again.
Can you hear me? Sorry.
We hear you now.
Okay, sorry. Figuring this out. So you mentioned you had 900 adding 900 new educators and then about 200 vacancies still. So is that about, you guys have added already about 640 positions?
Yes, just a little bit more than that, but yes, and we're a little ahead of where we have been in the last couple of years in terms of recruiting. We're actually thrilled with where we are relative to where we've been even just a week ago. That 160 full-time number was a little over 200 a week ago. So we're really making some progress in that space. We have some pretty critical needs. 39 of those positions are special education positions, and these are areas that definitely need support and are a target area for us. So MCPS is hiring, and we'd love to add new folks to Team MCPS. So I'd love to get that word out and share that that even though we're a little bit ahead of where we've been in past years, that we're still looking for great folks to join the team.
Yeah, and then, sorry. What are you guys doing to address some of the vacancies that you still have?
Well, good news for us is that our hiring season is year round, and we got a jump start on it this spring. And so I would like to pass along a lot of credit to our school staff, our principals, and our human resources staff, because their recruitment efforts earlier this year positioned us a lot better than we have been in years past.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley Campbell, Moco 360. Members of the media, any more questions for the superintendent at this time? No more questions related to MCPS, Montgomery County Public Schools? Guess not. Going once, going twice.
Well, Lorna, I just want to thank you, and I'd like to thank Mr. County Executive for your time today, and thank you for the kind invitation to join you, and look forward to seeing you on the first day of school and beforehand.
Thank you very much for joining us. We know you need to step out, and if we don't have any more questions, Mr. County Executive, do you want to say goodbye to the superintendent?
I want to say goodbye, but I also want to remind him, but also the audience, we have we've made trying to fund the schools a priority. And I've gone out on a limb a couple of times trying to get more money into the school system. If you look at where we are compared to where we were about 12 years ago, we're spending about 80% per pupil. And when you think that that translates into a lot of staff and the hours that staff have, particularly, for example, aides in the classroom, it has real impacts on the classroom. So my interest in trying to deal with this issue extends to both the operations of classrooms, but also school construction, where we've not had the resources to deal with it. So I'm going to continue to be committed to having discussions about what we need to do to provide them the resources. You know, we hear a lot of critics out there about the issues MCPS has. I like to remind people that in the so-called happy days, they were happier because the county put a lot greater investment into the school system and into our children. And I think we have to revisit how we approach this. I think accountability is important. The superintendent, I've had conversations about that, and I think we can do a lot better job on accountability. But we also need to be accountable as elected officials to make sure that we don't punish the school system because we're upset with some of the things that happen. Because at the end of the day, punishing the school system is punishing the kids. And we need to think about that when we take our postures on this. I think it's important also, we're going into the new school year. Parents need to get the kids vaccinated, make sure they're up to date. You actually won't be able to go to school. The kids won't be able to go to school at some point if they're not vaccinated. So it's critical. The county will play a role in this. We take appointments, but walk-ins are available at our 4 locations in the county: the Dennis Avenue Health Center in Silver Spring, the Germantown Health Center, the Silver Spring Health Center, and the school health center and immunization center in Rockville. And vaccinations for school-age children are free throughout the county. So if you need to get the range of vaccines, be sure you get them, and know that if money's an issue, our system is free. We just want you to make sure you're vaccinated, and your kid, not only when they go back to school, you get to stay in school and not be told they have to go home because they don't have the vaccination. So that's really important. And as the superintendent pointed out, there's an event this Saturday at Westfield Mall, and all MCPS families are encouraged to attend. There's lots of information there. And I want to thank Dr. Taylor for joining, and I look forward to working with him and his leadership team, as well as the Board of Education and MCEA through the upcoming year. And I'd be remiss, MCEA and SEIU, who provide the staffing for our schools. So thank you very much for being here. I look forward to talking to you. So I want to shift gears and talk about a storm, Hurricane Debbie. We didn't get hit by it, but it made landfall in Florida earlier this week as a Category 1. In anticipation of flooding in areas like South Carolina, FEMA deployed about 45 personnel from the Maryland Task Force 1. The task force is headquartered in Montgomery County, and though first responders from Howard County, Prince George's, Anne Arundel, and Frederick, and DC are also a part of it. On Sunday, they loaded at least half a dozen boats and their equipment before starting the journey to South Carolina, and they're currently stationed in Columbia, South Carolina. The team trains, prepares, and is certified for this life-saving job. They make Montgomery County proud when they selflessly risk their own lives to help strangers. And our hearts and thoughts go out with those whose homes are at risk of flooding, and also for the loved ones that, you know, our first responders leave behind when they go into these difficult situations. So much appreciate the people who do the work, and much appreciate the families that support it. Speaking of weather, this time of year, we are celebrating our agricultural reserve. And unfortunately, we are hearing from our farmers about the viability of their crops during this difficult weather condition. I was part of the farm tour this weekend, and I actually talked to a farmer who pointed to a field of corn that looked kind of normal, but he said it's a $400,000 loss. And it's a loss because of lack of water, kernels didn't form the right side, and so the corn is not marketable. And this is one reason why farmers have crop insurance. I know some people, you know, I've heard them say, why do we pay farmers, you know, when, you know, for crop failures? It's because you wouldn't be in this business, because, you know, failure of a crop has more to do with weather than anything else. And so farmers wouldn't be in the business if they had to, you know, sustain $400,000 losses. and possibly more with no kind of protection against those losses. So it's a high-risk business. Without food, we'd all be in deep trouble. So the crop insurance programs really are important for farmers, and they're important for farmers in Montgomery County. The Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments has placed Montgomery County under a drought watch. And the latest information from the National Drought Mitigation Center shows that more than 96% of Montgomery County is under extreme drought conditions. That is the dark orange and next to the right stuff, which is just outside of Montgomery County. Last summer, we peaked at 89% of the county in extreme drought before things improved. We've not seen things this dry in 20 years. We all ask residents and businesses in the county to take voluntary measures to conserve water to help reduce demand on the region's water supply. Drought conditions endanger crops and pasture land. They can prompt water shortages or restrictions. We should follow suggestions from WSSC to use water wisely, hold off on activities that use a lot of water, like washing your car. A lack of rain poses another danger, and that's flash flooding, because the ground is extremely dry. The rain we get has a hard time being absorbed. And this can lead to lots of rainwater with nowhere to go except the sewers. And if the sewers fill up too quickly, it becomes a problem. As remnants of Tropical Cyclone Debbie bring potential rainfall here over the next several days, this is something that all motorists need to be aware of. Montgomery County has been proactive in responding to this potential danger by adding flood sensors to help us alert drivers to elevated water levels in problem areas. And there are parts of the county, particular roads, that actually have a tendency to flood. Signing up for Alert Montgomery is a good way to receive information about potential dangers like flash flooding. And just over 2 weeks ago, Sunday the 21st, we set a record as the hottest day ever recorded on Earth. And hurricanes, tornadoes, drought, and extreme weather, wildfires burning in the west, these aren't all freak occurrences of Mother Nature. These are consequences of inaction on climate change. And it's going to cost a lot of money to deal with it. But it's going to cost even more if we don't deal with it. The county stormwater system alone is going to have to be updated, because the system was built in the county before calculations showed the level of rain that we're now expecting. It was built in a drier time. We had storms, we had rain. We may have had the same quantity of rain, but rain is coming down a bit differently now. We're seeing more and more of these large rainfall events. And when they hit dried soils, as you mentioned above, actually has a larger impact than small events that dump the same amount of water over a longer period of time. You know, rainfall over a week that comes down ½ inch, an inch at a time can get absorbed by the soil. But when you're hitting several inches of rain quickly onto soils, the water just sheets off, then it goes into the street, and it goes into the storm sewers, and it floods the storm sewers. And so they back up on the street. There are parts of the county where houses even get flooded. And so we have a lot of work to do. This is something really serious for us. It's not going to be cheap. But not doing it's going to be incredibly expensive, and it risks putting people at danger. And my greatest hope, the county's doing a lot to combat climate change, but we can't fix this by ourselves. Obviously, we need cooperation from the rest of the state and at the national level and internationally. Electrifying our county fleet is something we're doing, and advancing building energy efficiency. I hope as we head into the final stretch of the presidential election this fall, that voters look at what a candidate's record or position is on dealing with climate change. And if they're telling you this is just weather and nothing to get excited about, you should be very worried. And if they don't want to acknowledge how much of this is man-made, you should probably worry even more. We need political leadership willing to tax industries who told us for decades not to worry. And we've gotten very good at not worrying because we were told we didn't need to worry. And there's no such thing as climate change, they said, and everything will be as it was, and we just need to go about our business as usual. Going about business as usual is what drove us into this mess. We had moments that we probably could have averted much of what we're going to have to deal with, but neither us nor anybody else in the world took this terribly seriously. And so we find ourselves in a pretty difficult place right now. And I'm a firm believer that the people who brought us here and who created these conditions and told us that, let them do business the way they always have, because this is a big lie, they should help us pay for it, because it's not going to be cheap. And, they did really good making profits off the things they did. They need to pay for the external costs of what they did. There's no clear difference in philosophy between a lot of people, but there are certainly certain clear differences between two political parties and their candidates when it comes to taking these threats seriously, and who wants to make, and some who want to make this problem worse. I feel sympathy for the average resident, because, if you've been told something for years, it's easy not to believe. It certainly was easier a few years ago not to believe people who were talking about, oh, there's going to be climate change, and because we really hadn't started to see the things we're seeing now. There's pretty clear evidence, whether it's our weather or the fact that the Arctic and the Antarctic and Greenland are all going through simultaneous melts that will literally raise sea levels by many feet. These things are real, and they're going to impact us. And hopefully people can, figure out that, we really need to deal with this. Like I said, I'm sympathetic with people who thought they were being told the truth. We were not told the truth, and now we're paying for it. So that's what I want to say about climate change for now. I want to shift again to something that was fun this weekend. It was National Night Out. And last night, Montgomery County was home to dozens of National Night Out gatherings, supporting safe neighborhoods and law enforcement. And this has become an annual tradition in communities nationwide. This was the first opportunity, though, for our new Montgomery County Police Chief, Mark Yamada, and Montgomery County Fire and Rescue Service Chief Corey Smedley to get to know so many communities at once. And I feel like they're very well received out there. And they did a good job of explaining the kind of work they're doing and what their vision is. National Night Out campaign was established in 1984. It's grown to include more than 1 million community members in all 50 states. And events include block parties, festivals, cookouts, public safety demonstrations. I tried to attend as many celebrations as possible, including the gatherings in Albany, East County, Aspen Hill, and Rockville. I couldn't get to everything, but I talked to a lot of people, and it's just good to see so many people out. After participating in these events over years, I know the relationships formed and fortified through events like this go a long way toward helping our county. People really do take advantage of these opportunities to talk to first responders. I think it gives them a better sense of connection. I think it's good for first responders to have, these kind of positive discussions with people in the community. So I think there was an all-around great event last night. And I want to thank all the families and law enforcement personnel who took part in Tuesday's events. And also the county's staff was present at a number of them, both in our health and human services teams and other teams like recreation, as well as a lot of our nonprofits. So there are a lot of people out there giving out information, and I thought it was very helpful. This week, past weekend, we did downtown Silver Spring safety visits. The county engaged its latest business monitoring and enforcement event. These efforts have been held on an ongoing basis over the past several years in response to complaints of residents about businesses not complying with laws in place to protect public safety. And I'll say we got complaints from other businesses as well, because a bad climate in public safety affects not just the residents, but it affects the businesses as well who are trying to follow the law. We sent out a task force comprised of employees from our Department of Permitting, Alcoholic Beverage Services, Health and Human Services, all joined the Montgomery County Police Department to crack down on unlawful practices by late night businesses. The group found multiple problems, including illegal hookah operations, businesses improperly setting up cover charges, and violations for improper alcohol and food sales. Fire and safety violations were also noted. These illegal practices are disturbing because they compromise public safety. The council just passed the bill regarding hookah that restricted the hours to no later than the rest of the activities that are allowed at night. And we want people to visit businesses and to have fun in Montgomery County, but those businesses providing late night entertainment have to adhere to the safety standards we created, and they have to create safe environments. So owners of businesses You need to be clear about this. We are going to enforce the law, and we will shut businesses down. You will lose your alcohol licenses if you continue to violate this law. So we're not joking about this. We're taking this seriously. So I'd suggest, if you're listening, and this applies to your business, you need to take it seriously, because we're serious on our end. Montgomery County is committed to ensuring safety is always paramount. We'll be expanding these efforts to address public concerns. I encourage anyone who knows of an issue that needs to be addressed to contact the police on our non-emergency number. You don't need to call an emergency number in the afternoon to tell us about what you saw, but contact us or contact the appropriate county department. Before I take your questions, I'm going to give my health team an opportunity to provide updates they would like to share. My brief introduction to that is COVID is out there, and everybody I talk to, whether it's doctors or it's the hospitals, everybody is seeing an increased number of patients. I'll let my health team go from there.
Great. Thank you, Mr. County Executive. I just wanted to take a moment and highlight our annual Right from the Start event fair that is happening on Saturday from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. at Holy Cross Hospital's Conference Center. This event is free and open to the public. It focuses on supporting our Black children and families from preconception through early childhood. There will be a number of panels and educational events and resources, activities, and prizes for the kids and giveaways, as well as complimentary refreshments. So we hope to see you there. And if you would like to attend, you can call to register and reserve your spot at 240-777-3118, or you can email BH, so B as in boy, B as in boy, H at montgomerycountymd.gov. We hope to see you there. And I'll turn it over to Sean. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ashford. Just to reiterate the comments from our county executive, we are seeing COVID illnesses and hospitalizations increase, continuing through the past week. And although we're not at a level as high as some of the states on the West Coast, we are still climbing right now. So again, we're urging caution to those who are at greatest risk. It still appears to be having the greatest impact to those with underlying conditions, especially those who are 65 and older. So again, if you haven't gotten your booster shot this past year, there's still time. There should be an updated booster shot likely within the next month or so. And then I just wanted to also, again, recommend to parents to check on their children who are school-aged to ensure that they have all the required vaccinations. The county and its partners are continuing to do back-to-school vaccinations. And we have a big event at the Wheaton Mall on Saturday, August 24th, in coordination with our Montgomery County Public School partners. And we have a number of other sites around the county that we're providing these shots at no charge. And those are listed on our website, as well as an opportunity to schedule some appointments. So we, again, recommend people check into it. If you're able to get those through your pediatrician, that's also a great place to go as well.
Dr. Bridgers, Dr. Stoddard, any
Nothing
remarks?
for me this afternoon, Lorna. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Lauren, I just want to talk briefly about our storm preparation. Obviously, we are actively tracking the remnants of former hurricane, tropical cyclone Debbie as it moves up the coast. County Executive alluded to the efforts of our Montgomery Fire Rescue contingent of our Maryland Task Force 1, but obviously we are also monitoring it locally. This morning, in conjunction with National Weather Service, we looked at some updated models that right now appear that most of the remnants will track to the west of Montgomery County. What that will mean is a couple things. Number one, we probably will see a bit less rainfall, but because it is a tropical system, we are still expecting that there will be intermittent periods of high intense rain, which, as the county executive alluded to, with drought conditions on the ground, will contribute significantly to potential for flash floods. The other thing about the westerly course for this system might also mean that we may get more of the side of the storm that is more associated with tornadic activity. And so obviously that is something we're going to be actively monitoring. We do have a call with the Maryland Department of Emergency Management this afternoon that the local emergency management officials will be participating in, just as they did yesterday. And so we'll be looking at the more updated tracks for the storm as it approaches. We're looking more along the lines of Thursday evening into Friday, and then a little bit into the weekend for most of this. And so more to come on that. But as the county executive alluded to, please do sign up for Alert Montgomery as a mechanism to keep yourself as up to date as possible. So I will stop there.
Thank you, Dr. Stoddard. Okay, members of the media, we're going to open it up for questions right now. And Tom Bruce, the ABC 7, has been waiting. Thank you for waiting, Tom. Good afternoon. Go ahead, pose your question now.
All right, thank you. Sorry for jumping the gun earlier. It's been a long time since I did one of these. So yeah, for either County Executive Elrich or Dr. Stoddard, who answered some of my questions there. But is there anything, I know County Executive Elrich, you mentioned like, the gauges to know if there's flooding, but is there anything else the county is actively doing to prepare, like sandbags, anything like that? Or, and do you have any recommendations just for folks just to be ready in case there is that flooding? And if you could talk too, just about the fact that this is something we desperately need rain, but this may not be the type of rain we need, like you've been saying.
Yeah. Well, I'll say something quickly, and I think Earl maybe can add some of the details, but we need the rain, but it's not going to go where it needs to go. I mean, the purpose, why we need it, it needs to get in the ground, it needs to penetrate, get down to root level, because the ground's dried up pretty deeply, and go back into the aquifer. And when it just hits so quickly, it just sheets off the yard. Your yard almost is like concrete. I walked out the other day after one of these brief little downpours, and by the time I got outside, the street was dry and the dirt looked like dust. And I'm thinking, it just downpoured here. And that water lasted no time, and the heat evaporated whatever else, was left on the surface. So it's a problem. And, like I said, our stormwater system wasn't built to handle this volume of water. And so we don't have any short-term fix. We're doing a countywide study of all the watersheds. That'll determine what kind of capital projects. But, I think anybody can imagine where this goes, because if I have to replace the pipes, I am digging up the street, not just for one section of the street, because if the pipe's too small there, it's going to be too small downstream. And we're looking at much larger pipe systems, which is an issue. And I think it's over in either Alexandria and Arlington. They took like a football field and built the equivalent of a giant swimming pool underneath the ball field to hold rainwater, to divert it from streets, because there was nowhere to go but to flood back into streets. So that's the kind of major project that we're starting to contemplate. Do you find a nearby ball field and dig a giant hole in it and line it with concrete and try to direct water into there? So this is not going to be cheap. And also it's not going to happen tomorrow. But this is why, in my mind, we really have the right to go after the people who made this mess. And they like to blame the residents and say, all people made these decisions, it's the consumers. The consumers were told there were no consequences for their decisions. If they had been told, I'm going to present you with a giant bill to fix it, people might have thought differently about it. But that's my side of this. I'll let Earl talk about what other things we're doing.
Yeah, Tom. So obviously with sandbagging, it's most effective with riverine flooding, or flooding in places where it's flooding is going to occur. With a storm system like this, what we're concerned about is the near random locations of high intensity rainfalls that overwhelm the local storm water management systems in that area, and then lead to either street-based flooding. You could get backyard flooding. We often see that where actually, if you have certain topographic funnels that create water into places like that. And so we will have the Emergency Operations Center actively monitoring during the peak of the storm, certainly Friday into Saturday. And so we'll have some of our partners in the EOC ready to actively respond to whether that's water rescues or, if we see places where we need to close roadways. We have, the aptly named Beach Drive is a common place where we see flooding. And so we've already got floods. We've got flood monitors out in those locations where we have teams around the county making sure those flood monitors are actively working right now to make sure that as we get the rainfall of the coming days, we know there's certain places like that will more routinely flood, but then we also have to be prepared for the places that we will see atypical flooding because of pockets of storm that will come through and hit unpredictable places and just overwhelm the stormwater management capabilities in those areas. And so that's sort of what the county strategy is right now.
Thank you, Tom. Brian Sears, Maryland Matters. Good afternoon, Brian.
Good afternoon. Mr. County Executive, next week,
Hey, Ryan.
you're headed down to the Maryland Association of Counties, and I had a couple of quick questions. First
Yeah.
was, I was kind of interested in, I was in Cambridge in December, when there was a lot of discussion about holes in the transportation budget. Since then, in the last 8 months, we've also seen budget cuts at the state level. Wondering what kinds of concerns you specifically are taking to the Maryland Association of Counties meeting as it regards to your county and the budget and other transportation.
Well, I think, last year, the Mako counties, Republican and Democratic counties, supported changes in tax structure that would allow local jurisdictions to raise money the way they do in Virginia. And unlike Virginia, Maryland counties, Montgomery included, are pretty much totally dependent on the state and then hopefully federal money at times to deal with infrastructure needs. That is not the case in Northern Virginia. Northern Virginia has one authority, the Northern Virginia Transit Authority, that produces about $500 million a year for the counties in Northern Virginia. And on top of that, Fairfax County has property taxes that go up to $1. I think they add up to about $1.52 right now in Tyson's Corner to build infrastructure with. That's what they did over there. And the county has no such authority to do any of those things, neither does, and the state can't raise enough money. Nobody's talking about going back to an $8 billion fund. And so if we don't have flexibility in how we go after money, this county and this state's going to continue to struggle to grow. And I'll just say Virginia went in a very different direction. So for everybody out there who likes saying Virginia this and Virginia that, you ought to look at how Virginia did it, not just what they did, because that's an interesting story, but it validates what they did, because there's a letter actually came from a Republican governor after they passed these tax reforms in Virginia, gave the Northern Virginia counties the authority to tax development at a much higher level than Montgomery County. Like I said, almost 50% higher in Montgomery County, in Fairfax than in Montgomery County, in places like Tyson's. They gave them the authority to do that, and the Republican legislature passed it, and a Republican governor wrote an op-ed talking about how these taxes were going to lead to all this economic development in Virginia. I look at that letter now, 12 years later, and it's like, he was right, and we were wrong. We were dead wrong in how we approached infrastructure in this county and in this state. It's not just a county problem. So I think the governor's, I hope, I was sympathetic as we talked to him last year. We've been in meetings with him. We explained to him where we would sit competitively with Virginia. We would be very competitive with Virginia. We're not building the kind of projects that Virginia built. We fortunately can do a lot more with less here, but we and the other counties need this authority. I think everybody had this aha moment when the governor said there was no money. It was like everybody realized that we're all on the hook. We're not gonna be able to do anything if the state can't make these projects happen. Even the small counties, if they wanted to build a bridge or they needed to fix an intersection, they didn't have revenue streams to deal with it. Everybody's waiting for the state to give us money. So we know right now that's not going to happen. I don't expect the governor to discover magic. He's not going to come back and say, here's some magical new way of getting money, because there isn't any. So I think there's some tried and true things that we can look at, and hopefully, he's looking at that. The other things I'm hopeful of that continued expansion of early childhood. We'd be very interested in the state. Last year, they opened up the health insurance to undocumented people. It would be helpful if the state were to put some money into that, because you don't get complete health care through the clinics. Like the county has a very extensive clinic system, but it's not able to provide all the services, and it would take a load off of hospitals. I mean, these people ultimately, if they get very sick, wind up in a hospital. A lot of what people get sick with are things that could be dealt with much earlier at a much lower cost. So there's actually an economic reason to try to treat people early rather than later. So hopefully the state looks at that. Those are things that are particularly important. We need some authority. We need the ability to not just raise taxes differently, but we need the ability to separate residential from commercial, because the way it is right now, you can't raise a property tax without hitting residents. And Fairfax County did not nail its residents with these taxes. And I don't want to nail our residents with these taxes either. There's no reason for us not to go in the direction of Virginia.
Are you concerned that more budget reductions from at the state level are coming and that these will have an impact on local governments like yours?
Well, I'm concerned. I mean, the cuts he made weren't like, they weren't necessarily pure cuts. He'd redirected money to other things that, you know, had some urgency to them. And but some of the cuts have an effect on us. They're not huge, but it definitely means we're going to have to figure out how to backfill or what we do in their place. And I just hope the legislature will deal with the revenue picture more broadly. I mean, I should have said this in the beginning. There are a lot of companies pay no taxes in the state of Maryland, a lot of large corporations that pay no taxes. And there's no reason to have a tax system that excludes the wealthiest and excludes the largest companies from paying taxes when we're all building infrastructure so these companies come here and can thrive. And there are states that we compete with in the South that have things like combined reporting, which raises money based on a company's income in the state where they're doing their business. And there are plenty of the so-called southern states which are now magnets for companies to go there that are funding a lot of their costs out of the revenues they get from combined reporting. So here's a way to raise revenue without touching residents. And, you know, this is something else we think that we'd like to see, I'd like to see the state take another look at. There are things we could do that do not mean that you have to go over residents. And I think there are some people who like to just say tax increases and scare residents. The only way to increase taxes is if we go after them. And that's just simply not true. There are other ways to do it. Other counties are doing it. Other more conservative counties are doing it. We ought to do it.
Mr. County Executive, my final question. I mean, a year ago this time, the governor came to Mako and talked about the state facing a budget crisis. In December, he followed that up by telling the counties that the budget crisis was not only real, but there was a $3 billion hole in the transportation budget. What are you expecting to hear from the governor next Saturday? What would you like to hear from the governor next Saturday?
What I'd like to hear is like a willingness to engage with people in discussions about how to deal with the revenue problem. It is a problem. It is, you know, it does not serve us well to decide that, you know, raising revenues is off the table. And I know, like I said before, too often it gets hidden as, oh my God, you're going to raise revenues on residents. There are ways not to do that. And I hope we can all collectively develop the courage to do it. I mean, the governor needs to know there's support from people in the legislature as well. I mean, it's hard to go out and have nobody else standing up and saying, yeah, I know why this is important. I'm willing to put my name on it. But I think all of us need to work to try to solve this problem. And it's bad for Montgomery County, but it's bad for Maryland not to have the revenues you need to be competitive. And I'm hoping that we can all have those conversations and then come in, you know, down in Mako and then beyond.
Thank you, Brian. Jeannie Bexley, Local 360. Good afternoon, Jeannie.
Good afternoon, Lorna. I kind of want to go back to the discussion we were having about the drought conditions. I don't know, these might be questions for Earl, but is the county looking at any type of mitigation measures? You know, we've seen at times where, like right now, we have recommendations. I mean, I wrote about recommendations to make sure you're minimizing your water use. Could we see any like hard and fast restrictions coming up if this gets worse? You know, what is the county kind of looking at in terms of mitigating this crisis?
So we've certainly been in communications with WSSC, and obviously I think the city of Rockville has already issued some guidance around restrictions as well. We talked about, we'll probably be starting with messaging. You know, obviously it'll be dependent upon some of the information we get from the water providers about the exact conditions. And you know, as a sort of a general course of things, we would issue warnings around conservation first. And when you start to see those, the next phase would be actual restrictions. And again, it would be in part, it would be a conversation that would involve WSSC. It would, you know, because they're the ones who are tracking the Potomac River water levels and understand. Obviously, you know, as the former emergency manager, water shortages scare me a whole lot more than power outages do, as an example. The things like hospitals and their autoclaves and their ability to sterilize materials to dialysis patients, their water dependency is in many cases even more severe than power is. And so obviously when we talk about those kinds of measures, water restrictions, those are in the light of there being real risks to impediment to provision of critical services that rely on water, like hospitals and dialysis and other things of that nature. So we're actively tracking it. We haven't had those conversations at this point. We have had the conversations around messaging and guidance around more limited water use, people not watering their lawns, as things of that nature, timing of when you do wash, things of that nature. But we'll likely be having that conversation more robustly once we see exactly how much rainfall we do get from the storm system this week.
Yeah. And to kind of follow up on that, you mentioned the impact this could have on the hospitals, things like that. We've got a lot of health officials on this call. What are some of the health impacts we are seeing or could see from this drought?
Health impacts. Anybody taking that question?
Yeah, I thank you for that question. When we think about the potential health impacts from the drought, really it's in combination with the impacts from the heat and needing to stay cool and make sure that folks are staying hydrated and taking the appropriate precautions, that they are able to access water, whether that be from their homes or some of the other resources that are provided in the county. But when we think about health impacts related to the drought, they tend to go hand in hand with the health impacts that we see from the heat.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeannie. Kate Ryan, WTRP. Good afternoon again, Kate.
Hey, good afternoon. And Ginny got to the heart of what I wanted to ask, but just to follow up, is there any one trigger, Dr. Stoddard, that would go, aha, this is when we go from talking about potential notification, then restrictions, and what would that be?
Yeah, so if you've ever been down to the Potomac Water Treatment Plant, they can show you right at the Potomac River level where the intake is, various water levels, and that they're historically based, and they know exactly, like, if water gets down to this level, that we start to see an impediment to the water coming into the system. And that's when I think you'd really start to get worried about considering impacts. And so it very much, the Potomac Water Treatment Plant provides, I believe, it's been a couple of years since I've gotten the exact, but it's about 75%. We have the Potomac, we have the Patuxent water treatment plants that provide the water to Montgomery County and to a number of counties around us. Fortunately, and most of the water providers in the region all do draw in large part from the Potomac River. Our intake for the Potomac Water Treatment Plant that serves WSSC is actually in a little bit better place, and it's a little bit deeper than even Fairfax's is. And so candidly, obviously, we're sort of monitoring what the other providers are doing, what the other counties are saying, because we know that they are a bellwether for if we start to see issues in Fairfax, for example, where their intake is a little bit less deep than ours is. We know that we may be getting to points where we may start to consider it, but it is all based on what WSSC provides us information about, which is how close we are to getting into a danger spot for the intake for the plant.
The plant you're referring to, is that the one on River Road?
Yes. Yes.
Got it. Okay. And real quick for the county exec, you mentioned the farmer who was talking about his corn crop. Just a couple of weeks ago, I was out talking to a farmer about where he was, and he was like, it's not too bad right now. How many other farms are saying they're really taking it on the chin with this current drought?
So we talked to a few people who are getting hurt, and we talked to people who aren't getting hurt. The thing that surprised me, because I think of the ag reserve, it's in Montgomery County, it's a big blotch of land. There were farmers who were getting enough rain that their crops were still coming in. just a mile or two away from farmers who weren't getting any rain. And they said that the rain up there can be very localized. And apparently it is, because I drove in probably less than 10 minutes from the farmer who was going to lose his corn crop to another farmer whose crops were doing okay. And they both of them said, you know, you can go around a corner, you can drive a couple of miles from here, and the weather is very different. But there's not a lot of water for anybody, but some people are getting enough, some clearly are not getting enough.
Got it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kate. Scott Broom, WUSA 9. Good afternoon, Scott.
Hey, I was enjoying the water discussion and I went ahead and got on the river gauge while we were talking about it. And Point of Rocks upstream is scheduled to go to 6.5 feet with this rainstorm, and it'll probably all be muddy and come through all at one time. It won't help much at all. But anyway, it's on my mind too. Speaking of weather, I've been assigned to deal sort of with fallout and impact around the region after a worker death in Baltimore City, which has attracted a lot of attention, including from the governor, trash collector that fell out from heat and unfortunately died. So I'm sort of canvassing around to local jurisdictions. I've talked to Alexandria and Arlington today, Prince George's, for instance, just casting around for points of news which may go to worker safety in extreme heat. I'm really unsure what the county may or may not have been doing in terms of worker training, reacting to that incident in Baltimore, if there's anything short-term that's going on. Arlington, for instance, told me they started a workers' heat safety training program a couple of years ago, and they modified their trash pickup schedules with their contractors. So I'm looking for points of news like that, just to see what may or may not be going on in Montgomery County as it relates to public worker safety with the heat that we're dealing with, along with the drought.
I'm happy to.
Yeah, go ahead.
Great, thanks.
So yeah, and I mean, I'm in. You know, this is a point of, I think, pride for Montgomery County. We've really leaned into the extreme temperature concerns. It's heat and cold both directions. Both from the perspective of residents, but also that the same conversations are applied internally as well. And what do I mean by that is that we've had a 2-tiered heat alerting system in Montgomery County for at least the last 7 or 8 years. We actually modeled it a lot after what the District of Columbia did as well, and so they deserve credit for it too. And what we do often is we're actively monitoring, and what you will see in heat, and actually the county executive was alluding to this with rain, it varies a lot. And so we take multiple county measurements to try and figure out where there's going to be risk. Obviously you have the urban heat island effect in downtown Silver Spring and downtown Bethesda, for example, and it can feel very different if you are in Damascus, for example. And so we obviously provide that information out to internally and externally within the government and external to the government. Now, we obviously have some very front-facing operations within Department of Transportation, General Services, and the like. With regard to trash collection, obviously a lot of that is done via contract in Montgomery County, as opposed to our equivalent DPW is a combination of our General Services and Environmental Protection, who does solid waste. And so in many cases, we're actually providing information out to both our contractors, but also take our permitting services department. They'll often communicate out to the permit holders who are, they regulate the construction sites in Montgomery County, for example. So it's not just county workers in those cases. It may be workers who are doing work on a county property, but who are a contractor, for example. We'll often provide information out to them and provide guidance on safe work conditions. Now, contractors obviously do have some latitude about how they can operate their work sites, but that's they are the employer in those cases. We're providing them education and information about the risks and providing them information about how to protect their workers, limiting their exposure, increasing their water intake, having frequent breaks and shaded spots for those breaks, things of that nature. And so this has been an area where we've greatly increased. Now we're actively waiting from some information. We're having conversations with state partners around what's happened in Baltimore to understand exactly what the context of that worker was. I don't know if there was any pre-existing health conditions, for example, that we should be aware of in our workers that that we need to maybe we do some additional work in that space as well. But obviously, this is something we're increasing as climate change continues to impact both Montgomery County, Maryland, and the country and the world for that matter. This is one of those areas where we've got to be we have greater awareness of heat conditions, and this is something that we've had a lot of conversation about over the last several years. We'll continue to do so. Thanks, Scott.
Okay, got it. Thanks for taking the time.
And, I'd add, we have a pretty open communication with our union, and, they're the folks that have folks out on the front line. And so if we hear anything from them that needs to be addressed, we react to it pretty quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I was of interest. For instance, I came across some jurisdictions today that, sort of treat like certain heat mitigations, ice on trucks, cooling towels and all that. They now treat that like hard hats. I mean, they've sort of put it as part of their regs. It's sort of safety equipment that they have to have. And I don't know if the county's there yet on stuff like that, but those are the kind of news points I'm running across today.
Yeah, I that's not something I've talked too much about, but that's a good point to follow up, and I think we certainly can do that.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, fellas.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Okay, members of the media, any more questions for the county executive and county officials this afternoon? No more questions? Well, thank you everybody for joining us. Have a great afternoon. Stay safe. We'll see you next time.